I created brand new custom enemies in Mario Odyssey. My original idea was to recreate classic Mario enemies, but it ended up being a whole lot more. From proper animations to custom code and everything in between, this project turned out to be one of my craziest ones yet. The Gruel. Okay, my initial understanding of enemies was not the greatest. So I wanted to start this project with a simple enemy, and this is as simple as it gets. I grabbed a model and started on the actor file. This file contains almost everything we need to make an enemy. I quickly threw something together, coded some simple movement, and checked it out in game. It is a start at least. We just gotta scale it up a bit. This immediately brought it from cute little dude to somewhat menacing. Now all we have left is collision and damage. The collision itself was relatively simple, but the damage was a whole different story. See, I could have went with normal damage, like most enemies, but I wanted the Gruel to actually be a threat. So I had a few options. Poison, which insta-kills Mario, or lava. But neither seemed like a good fit. If only there was some kind of damage that crushes Mario when underneath. First off, I had no idea this was a sub-area. Second, I gotta figure out how these pillars work. It was actually pretty simple. I'll try to explain. So, every collision in Odyssey has something called attributes linked to them. Think like a Pokemon type. This is what tells the game the collision's type. Within these is a special one called Press, which is precisely what these pillars use to crush Mario. I applied this same attribute to my collision, and let me tell you, this is exactly what I was looking for. Please work. Please. Perfect. Let's move on to enemy number 2, Thwomps. To be honest, I probably should have started with the Thwomp. I mean, it's basically the Gruel with less movement. There's just one key difference. This one Thwomp is actually 4 different models, 1 outline, and 3 faces for each of the different expressions. The reason I did it like this is to make it really easy to swap between them through a little bit of code. This surprisingly worked really well in game. After that, all I had to add was this shadow to indicate where he's going to attack. And with that, the Thwomp was basically complete. At this point, we successfully learned modeling and texturing, as well as collision and sensors. Next up is animations. Because the focus was specifically on animations, I decided to replace existing enemies to speed up the process. Kirby will swap out Dry Bones, Sonic, a Spiny with increased speed, and Pichu will be the Mini Goomba. This process was something alright. It was pain. The combination of extracting, animating, and replacing the Smash models was far from perfect. After days of failed attempts, I finally started to make some progress. Once I got the actors working in game, it was time to make the changes to Sonic and Pichu. For Sonic, all I had to do was find the base speed for the Spiny and multiply it by 3. For Pichu, I added this electric effect from the electric pole guys, and by the end of it, we had 3 fully animated enemies working in game. You know what this means? We are now ready to create our first boss, Thunder Lakitu. To start things off, we had to get the model and animations. This was relatively straightforward because he is, well, from a previous Mario game. The main thing I had to work on was what I'm going to call the battle loop. This includes the movement, attacks, and how it takes damage. In Galaxy, it looks something like this. Thunder Lakitu will move side to side, randomly deciding to throw Spinies at Mario. You can deal damage by spitting the Spinies back at him with Yoshi. This causes him to use the lightning attack, and the cycle repeats. Now, for my version, I wanted to follow this same structure, but also decided to come up with a few creative tweaks. The first being the movement. I didn't like the limiting nature of the original movement, so I coded mine to move freely on a horizontal plane. This allows the fight to be slightly different each time. The other change was with the projectile. Frankly, I didn't know how to add new actions to Yoshi or Spiny, so instead I coded my own projectile. This projectile can do 3 different things. 1, it deals damage if it directly hits Mario. 2, if it hits the ground, it will burn the surrounding area. And last, it can be reflected back with Cappy. Now, this will stun Lakitu and make him fall to the ground, which is the perfect opening to deal damage. The rest of it is the same. Lakitu will use the lightning attack, and the cycle repeats until you defeat him. Now, obviously there was a few different things I had to add, like a custom camera to fit the fight, but otherwise, this is a Lakitu in all its glory. That was my first ever custom boss. I still can't believe I made this. These next two enemies, I wanted to be more advanced than an average Mario enemy. Instead of being limited to one attack, I figured they should each have 2 attacks. First up is Shovel Knight. Of course I have to keep his iconic shovel attack, which was kinda hard to replicate in a 3D environment. I got it working well enough. Now for the ranged attack. I decided to make a custom rock that he can launch from the ground. Now for defeating him, I didn't want to do the classic jump on the head bit that every Mario enemy has. Plus, this didn't really make sense with him wearing armor and all anyways. So instead, I made the rock attack reflectable, which is able to break through his armored defense. Now for the other enemy, Villager. Looking through his Smash moveset, I found the perfect 2 moves to recreate. The axe would be perfect for a melee attack, and the long range should obviously be based on the side B rocket move. I easily got the axe attack working and found a way to create a reskinned bullet bill that spawns with the Villager. You can use this rocket to defeat him. This next one is more like a mini boss. I'm gonna call him the Grapple Chomp. This one I decided to go a little bit wacky with it. Instead of adding a brand new enemy to the game, why not take an existing enemy and change it up a little bit? So after some thought, I decided to go with the Madame Brood Chain Chomp, which honestly makes for an interesting story. Imagine, after Madame Brood is defeated, the only thing that remains is the Chain Chomp, who is now freed from its chains. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't fully sold on this enemy idea, but it actually turned out really well in the end. For the attack, I added a tongue that can grab onto Mario and eat him, or if it grabs the ground, it'll launch the Chain Chomp in that direction. To defeat him, you must force him to eat these explosive barrels, which is something I made a while ago. Before we move on to the final boss, the Whomp King, there was still one type of enemy I wanted to create, that being a water enemy. I figured that even if I couldn't get it to work, I might as well at least give it a try. So I found the perfect candidate, Claptrap. Now, I'm gonna keep this short because it kind of was a last minute addition, but a few things I would like to know are some of the animations were actually made by me. And I have to say, if any of you guys watching this are animators, I would like to give huge props for what you do, because that is the most tedious thing I've ever done in my life. Along with getting the physics to work, as well as damage and everything else that comes with the enemy, this is my first, and probably last, water enemy. It's time to go full circle, back to the start of this whole project, the Whomp King. I went to go see my first attempt at this. That was over a full year ago, but with our newly gained knowledge, there was no way I was going to give up on it this time. Getting the model, a cakewalk. The animations, boom. Collision, already done. The Whomp King himself is not a complex enemy. His attack is a slam, and he takes damage when you ground pound his back. Pretty simple, right? These 2 things were pretty easy to replicate. When it came to adding difficulty, I thought about making elemental variants, but I think I'm going to save that for a future project. So for now, we just have the basic Whomp King, which is good enough for me. If you're interested in seeing gameplay of these enemies, check out this video. Also, I heard there is this really cool button below that you should click.